The scorching Afghan sun beat down mercilessly on the rocky terrain as Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez wiped the sweat from his brow. His SEAL Team 6 unit had been deployed to the Helmand province for what intelligence reports called a routine reconnaissance mission. Nothing about this place felt routine to Marcus. The Taliban had been particularly active in this region, and something in the air made his combat instincts scream danger. Lieutenant Commander Jake Thompson, the team leader, gathered his 8-man squad around a makeshift command post hidden behind a cluster of boulders. The landscape stretched endlessly before them, a mixture of desert plains and scattered vegetation that provided minimal cover. Thompson's weathered face showed the strain of 3 consecutive deployments, but his eyes remained sharp and focused. "Listen up." Thompson's voice was barely above a whisper, yet every word carried the weight of command. "Intelligence suggests there's a high-value target operating from a compound approximately 2 clicks northeast of our position. Our job is to observe, gather intel, and report back. No engagement unless absolutely necessary." Petty Officer First Class David Kim, the team's communications specialist, adjusted his radio equipment while scanning the horizon through his binoculars. Something felt off about this mission from the start. The usual chatter from nearby villages had gone silent, and the local wildlife seemed unusually scarce. In his 5 years of special operations, Kim had learned to trust these subtle environmental warnings. Sergeant First Class Miguel Santos, the team's medic and explosive ordnance specialist, checked his gear for the 3rd time. His hands moved methodically through his medical supplies, ensuring everything was properly secured. Santos had seen too many good men fall because someone overlooked a detail that seemed insignificant at the time. The quiet efficiency of his movements reflected years of training and real-world experience. As the team prepared to move out, Petty Officer Second Class Alex Johnson positioned himself as the designated marksman. His M110 semi-automatic sniper system felt familiar in his hands, like an extension of his own body. Johnson had earned his reputation as one of the finest shooters in the Navy, but something about this terrain made him uneasy. The grass pattern seemed unusual, creating shadows and visual distortions that could easily conceal threats. The squad began their advance, using standard tactical formations. Corporal Tommy Williams took point, his eyes constantly scanning for improvised explosive devices and potential ambush sites. Williams had survived 2 previous deployments by maintaining paranoid attention to detail, and he wasn't about to let his guard down now. Every step was calculated, every movement deliberate. Petty Officer 3rd Class Ryan Martinez covered the team's left flank, his M4 carbine ready for immediate action. Martinez was the youngest member of the team, but his enthusiasm was tempered by solid training and natural tactical instincts. He understood that in this environment, a single mistake could cost lives, and he was determined not to be the weak link. Chief Petty Officer Robert Chen brought up the rear, ensuring no threats approached from behind. Chen's experience as a former Marine Scout sniper made him invaluable in terrain like this. His trained eye could spot movement and potential threats that others might miss, and his presence provided an additional layer of security for the advancing team. The first hour of their movement proceeded without incident. The SEAL team navigated rocky outcroppings and sparse vegetation with practiced efficiency. Their communication remained minimal, relying on hand signals and predetermined movements that had been rehearsed countless times during training exercises. However, as they approached a ridgeline that would provide their first clear view of the target compound, Martinez noticed something that made his blood run cold. The grass in the area ahead showed unusual patterns of disturbance, as if someone had recently moved through the area but taken great care to conceal their passage. "Hold position." Thompson's voice came through their comm systems, barely audible even through their earpieces. He had noticed the same irregularities that Martinez spotted, and his combat experience told him they were walking into a potential trap. The team immediately went to ground, using whatever natural cover was available. Their training kicked in automatically, each man assuming a defensive position while maintaining fields of fire that would allow them to support each other if contact was made with hostile forces. Johnson adjusted his scope, scanning the area ahead for any signs of enemy presence. The afternoon sun created challenging lighting conditions, with shadows that seemed to shift and move even when there was no wind. Through his magnified optic, he thought he caught a glimpse of movement, but when he focused on the specific location, there was nothing visible. Santos monitored the team's medical status while keeping watch on their flanks. Each man's breathing was controlled and steady, indicating they were managing stress levels effectively despite the obvious tension of the situation. His medical training had taught him to recognize the early signs of combat stress, and he was prepared to intervene if any team member showed signs of impairment. Kim attempted to establish communication with their forward operating base, but the radio signals seemed to be experiencing unusual interference. This was another red flag that suggested enemy forces in the area might be using electronic warfare tactics to disrupt American communications capabilities. Chen's experience told him they were being observed, even though he couldn't identify the source of the threat. His sniper background had given him an almost supernatural ability to sense when he was in someone else's crosshairs, and every instinct he possessed was screaming warnings. Williams maintained his forward observation post, but the landscape ahead seemed to have changed subtly since they first approached the area. Grass that had been bent in one direction now seemed to lean differently, and shadows that should have remained constant appeared to have shifted positions. The team remained in their concealed positions for nearly 30 minutes, watching and waiting for any clear indication of enemy presence. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional whisper of wind through the sparse vegetation and the distant call of a desert bird. Thompson made the decision to continue the advance, but with modified tactics that would provide additional security. The team would move in shorter bounds, with more frequent stops to observe and assess their surroundings. Each man understood that their survival might depend on their ability to detect threats before those threats could act against them. As they crested the ridgeline, the target compound came into view for the first time. The intelligence reports had been accurate regarding its location and general layout, but what the reports hadn't mentioned was the unusual amount of activity visible in and around the buildings. This wasn't the quiet safe house they had been expecting to observe. Martinez counted at least a dozen individuals moving around the compound, some carrying what appeared to be military-style weapons. The level of organization and equipment visible suggested this wasn't a typical Taliban cell, but rather a more sophisticated operation with better training and resources. Johnson began taking detailed photographs through his scope, documenting the layout, personnel, and equipment visible at the target location. This intelligence would be crucial for planning any future operations against the facility, assuming the team could successfully complete their reconnaissance mission. The compound itself was larger than expected, with multiple buildings connected by covered walkways that would provide concealed movement for defenders. The perimeter showed signs of recent fortification, with fighting positions that had been carefully camouflaged but were still visible to trained military observers. Santos noted the tactical challenges that any assault on this position would present. The elevation advantage held by the defenders, combined with prepared positions and clear fields of fire, would make any frontal attack extremely costly in terms of casualties. Kim continued attempting to establish reliable communications with their base, but the interference pattern suggested deliberate jamming rather than natural atmospheric conditions. This implied a level of technical sophistication that was unusual for typical insurgent groups in the region. Chen observed the surrounding terrain, looking for potential escape routes and alternate positions that could be used if their current location became compromised. His experience had taught him that the best snipers always had multiple contingency plans prepared before they ever took their first shot. Williams noticed that the grass patterns in their immediate area continued to show signs of recent disturbance, but the nature of the disturbance suggested someone with advanced fieldcraft skills had been operating in the vicinity. This wasn't the typical foot traffic that untrained insurgents would leave behind. The team spent the next 2 hours conducting detailed surveillance of the compound, documenting patterns of activity and identifying key personnel and equipment. The information they gathered would be invaluable for future operational planning, but they needed to survive long enough to deliver their intelligence report. As the afternoon progressed, Thompson began planning their withdrawal route. The mission had been more successful than anticipated in terms of intelligence gathering, but the increased activity at the compound suggested their window of opportunity for safe extraction was closing rapidly. The first indication that their situation had become critical came when Johnson spotted a reflection in the distance that shouldn't have been there. Through his scope, he could see what appeared to be optical equipment, positioned in an area that provided overwatch of their current location. "We've got company." Johnson's voice was barely audible through the comm system, but every team member understood the implications immediately. They were no longer the observers. They had become the observed. The enemy sniper who had been tracking them was unlike anything they had encountered before. His position was perfectly camouflaged, utilizing the natural grass patterns in a way that made detection nearly impossible even with advanced optical equipment. The SEALs realized they were facing someone with skills that matched or exceeded their own. Thompson made the tactical decision to initiate immediate withdrawal procedures. The intelligence they had gathered was too valuable to risk in a prolonged engagement, and their current position offered limited defensive advantages if they came under direct fire. However, as the team prepared to move, they discovered that their withdrawal routes were now being covered by additional enemy positions. What had started as a reconnaissance mission had evolved into a deadly game of chess, with their opponents demonstrating tactical sophistication that exceeded all previous intelligence estimates. The grass around their position seemed to come alive with barely perceptible movement, suggesting multiple enemy personnel were maneuvering to establish an encirclement. The SEALs found themselves trapped in an increasingly dangerous situation, with their survival depending on their ability to outthink and outmaneuver opponents who had proven themselves to be formidable adversaries. Martinez detected movement to their left flank, but when he focused his attention on the specific location, everything appeared normal. The enemy's camouflage and concealment techniques were so advanced that they could move through grass fields without creating visible disturbance patterns. Santos prepared his medical equipment for potential casualties, while also readying the explosive charges that might be needed to create diversionary tactics or eliminate specific threats. His dual role as medic and demolitions expert made him a crucial asset in situations like this. Kim finally managed to establish brief communication with their base, but the message he was able to transmit was fragmentary and cut short by renewed jamming. The base would know they were in trouble, but specific details about their situation and location couldn't be effectively communicated. Chen identified what he believed to be the primary enemy sniper position, but the range and terrain conditions made a successful counter-sniper shot extremely challenging. The enemy marksman had chosen his position with the skill of a true professional, maximizing his advantages while minimizing his vulnerabilities. The situation continued to deteriorate as the afternoon sun began to set, creating lighting conditions that would further favor the enemy forces. The SEALs understood that their chances of survival were decreasing with each passing minute, and they needed to take decisive action before darkness made their situation completely hopeless. William spotted what appeared to be a potential escape route through a drainage system that hadn't been visible in their initial reconnaissance. However, reaching that route would require crossing open ground that was certainly covered by enemy weapons positions. Johnson maintained his overwatch position, ready to provide covering fire if the team attempted to move. His ammunition supply was limited, but each shot would need to count if they were going to fight their way out of the encirclement. The enemy sniper who had been tracking them remained invisible, like a ghost made of grass and shadow. His presence was felt rather than seen, creating a psychological pressure that tested the mental resilience of even these elite warriors. The SEALs knew they were facing someone whose skills had been honed through years of combat experience, and underestimating this opponent would be fatal. As darkness approached, Thompson realized that their conventional tactics weren't sufficient to deal with this unprecedented threat. They would need to think creatively and use unconventional methods if they hoped to survive the night and complete their mission successfully. The setting sun painted the Afghan landscape in shades of orange and red, creating a beautiful scene that masked the deadly reality facing the trapped SEAL team. Thompson checked his watch and realized they had been pinned down for over 3 hours. The enemy sniper, whom they had begun calling the Grass Phantom, continued to maintain his invisible presence somewhere in the surrounding terrain. Johnson adjusted his position slightly, trying to get a better angle on what he believed to be the enemy sniper's hide site. The challenge wasn't just finding the target, it was doing so without exposing himself to what was clearly a marksman of exceptional skill. Through his scope, he studied every blade of grass, every shadow, every subtle irregularity that might reveal his opponent's location. The psychological warfare being conducted by their unseen adversary was taking its toll on the team. Every movement had to be calculated and deliberate, knowing that a single mistake could result in instant death. The stress of maintaining perfect discipline while under constant observation was exhausting, even for operators of their caliber. Martinez had been watching the left flank when he noticed something that made his heart race. A section of grass approximately 200 meters away showed the slightest movement, just a gentle swaying that was inconsistent with the wind patterns affecting the surrounding vegetation. He immediately signaled Thompson, using hand gestures that had been drilled into them during countless training exercises. Thompson acknowledged Martinez's signal and began formulating a plan that might allow them to gain the upper hand. The enemy's strength lay in concealment and patience, but those same qualities could become weaknesses if properly exploited. They needed to force the grass phantom to reveal himself or create an opportunity for escape. Santos prepared a diversionary explosive charge, carefully calculating the placement and timing that would create maximum confusion without endangering friendly forces. His demolitions training included psychological warfare techniques, and he understood how to use controlled explosions to manipulate enemy behavior patterns. Chen had been analyzing the terrain features that could be used to their advantage. His sniper background gave him unique insight into how their opponent was likely thinking and planning. The key was to anticipate the enemy's next move while simultaneously preparing multiple contingency options. Kim managed to establish another brief communication with their forward operating base, this time successfully transmitting their grid coordinates and basic situation report. The response indicated that close air support was being scrambled, but weather conditions and enemy air defenses in the region would delay any immediate assistance. Williams continued his forward observation, documenting every detail that might provide tactical intelligence about their opponents. The enemy force appeared to be larger than initially estimated, with at least 6 individuals moving in coordinated patterns around the SEAL team's position. The compound they had been sent to observe showed increased activity as darkness approached. Additional personnel had arrived during their observation period, suggesting either a planned meeting or a response to the American reconnaissance mission. Either scenario indicated their presence had been detected earlier than they realized. Johnson finally spotted a muzzle flash reflection that lasted less than 1/10 of a second, but it was enough to confirm the general location of at least one enemy sniper position. The distance was approximately 400 meters, well within his effective range, but the target remained completely invisible except for that brief optical signature. The enemy's discipline was remarkable. Most insurgent groups would have initiated contact hours earlier, but these opponents demonstrated the patience and tactical sophistication of professional military personnel. This suggested they were facing either foreign advisors or locally trained fighters with extensive combat experience. Martinez detected additional movement on their right flank, indicating the encirclement was becoming more complete as time passed. The enemy was methodically closing their escape routes while maintaining the tactical initiative. Standard SEAL doctrine emphasized aggressive action, but their current situation required defensive patience. Thompson made the decision to implement a tactical deception plan that had been developed for exactly this type of scenario. The team would create the appearance of attempting to withdraw along their primary escape route, while actually preparing to break out in an unexpected direction. Santos began preparing multiple explosive charges with time delays that would create a sequence of diversions. The psychological impact of coordinated explosions would hopefully cause the enemy to reveal their positions or create gaps in their surveillance coverage. Chen identified a secondary sniper position that provided overwatch of their suspected escape route. The enemy had anticipated their most likely course of action and prepared accordingly, demonstrating the kind of tactical thinking that characterized elite military units. Kim's communication attempts revealed that their base had lost all electronic contact with other friendly units in the region. This suggested a coordinated enemy operation that extended beyond their immediate tactical situation, possibly involving multiple SEAL teams or other special operations forces. Williams observed that the grass patterns around their position were changing as the enemy continued to maneuver. What had initially appeared to be natural vegetation was being systematically manipulated to provide concealment for advancing hostile forces. Johnson prepared for what he knew would be the shot of his career. The enemy sniper's position was partially revealed by the muzzle flash reflection, but engaging the target would expose his own location and invite immediate retaliation. The mathematics of the engagement favored whoever fired first and hit their target. The grass phantom's tactical patience was extraordinary. Hours had passed without any aggressive action from the enemy force, suggesting they were content to maintain their containment while possibly waiting for additional assets to arrive. This professional approach to warfare was unlike anything the SEALs had encountered in previous deployments. Martinez noticed that the enemy was using advanced camouflage techniques that went beyond standard military training. The grass concealment showed evidence of specialized fieldcraft that required years of experience to master. They were facing someone who had elevated camouflage and concealment to an art form. Thompson realized that conventional tactics weren't sufficient for their current predicament. The enemy had demonstrated superior knowledge of local terrain and weather conditions, plus tactical skills that matched their own specialized training. Victory would require innovation and calculated risk-taking. Santos completed his preparation of diversionary charges, but he understood that explosive devices alone wouldn't solve their tactical problem. The enemy positions were too well established and professionally prepared to be eliminated through indirect fire alone. Chen began calculating wind patterns and environmental factors that would affect long-range shooting. The atmospheric conditions were becoming increasingly challenging, as temperature differences created thermal currents that could deflect bullets unpredictably. Kim attempted to coordinate with other American units in the region, but the communication blackout appeared to be comprehensive. This suggested either widespread technical failures or a coordinated electronic warfare campaign that exceeded typical insurgent capabilities. Williams documented the professional military equipment being used by enemy forces, the optical devices, communication systems, and weapons visible through his observation equipment indicated significant financial backing and training infrastructure. Johnson made minute adjustments to his scope settings, accounting for the changing light conditions and estimated range to target. The shot would require perfect execution under extremely challenging conditions, with no opportunity for a follow-up attempt. The psychological pressure continued to mount as the SEAL team maintained their defensive positions. Every sound, every movement, every shadow required constant evaluation to determine whether it represented a threat or natural environmental activity. Martinez identified what appeared to be an enemy forward observer position that was directing the movements of other hostile personnel. Eliminating this target might disrupt their opponent's coordination, but it would also reveal the SEAL team's position and capabilities. Thompson weighed the tactical options available to his team, understanding that each decision could determine whether they survived the night or became casualties of an enemy who had demonstrated remarkable skill and patience. Santos prepared his medical equipment for what he anticipated would be a violent engagement once their tactical stalemate was broken. His supplies included battlefield painkillers and blood-clotting agents that could mean the difference between life and death for wounded team members. Chen studied the enemy sniper's probable field of view, trying to identify blind spots that could be exploited during their eventual breakout attempt. The terrain features provided limited concealment options, but careful movement might allow them to reach better defensive positions. Kim managed to establish momentary contact with a drone aircraft operating in the region, but the communication was too brief to coordinate close air support. The enemy's electronic warfare capabilities were sophisticated enough to disrupt even military satellite communications. Williams observed that the compound they had been sent to reconnoiter was now showing defensive preparations, with personnel establishing fighting positions and weapons emplacements. This confirmed that their surveillance mission had been detected and compromised. Johnson felt the familiar calm that preceded combat engagement, his breathing steady and controlled despite the stress of the situation. Years of training had prepared him for moments like this, when a single shot could determine the outcome of an entire mission. The enemy force demonstrated remarkable fire discipline, with no unnecessary movement or communication that could reveal their positions or intentions. This professional approach to combat operations suggested extensive training and experience in asymmetric warfare scenarios. Martinez continued his vigilant observation of the team's flanks. Knowing that the enemy's next move would likely involve a coordinated assault from multiple directions, the tactical principles being employed by their opponents indicated military training that exceeded typical insurgent capabilities. Thompson prepared to issue orders that would commit his team to decisive action. The waiting game favored their opponents, who were operating on familiar terrain with apparent logistical support from nearby friendly forces. Santos double-checked his explosive timing devices, ensuring they would function correctly when activated. The success of their breakout attempt would depend on precise coordination between diversionary explosions and tactical movement under enemy fire. Chen identified additional enemy positions that had been established during their hours-long standoff. The opponent's tactical patience had allowed them to improve their positions while maintaining constant pressure on the trapped SEAL team. Kim prepared his equipment for rapid movement, knowing that their eventual escape attempt would require abandoning their current defensive positions and moving across open terrain under hostile observation. Williams maintained his forward watch position, ready to provide covering fire and target identification when their breakout began. His role would be crucial in identifying immediate threats and coordinating the team's movement. Johnson prepared for what he knew would be the most important shot of his military career, understanding that success or failure would likely determine whether his teammates survived the night. The Grass Phantom remained invisible, a deadly presence that continued to demonstrate tactical skills and professional patience that challenged everything the SEAL team thought they knew about their enemies in this region. The psychological warfare being conducted through superior concealment and fieldcraft was unlike anything they had encountered in previous combat operations. Darkness descended over the Afghan mountains like a heavy blanket, bringing with it a new set of challenges for the embattled SEAL team. Thompson understood that night operations could either save them or seal their fate, depending on how well they adapted their tactics to the changing conditions. The enemy had demonstrated remarkable skill during daylight hours, but darkness might level the playing field. Johnson activated his night vision scope, immediately noticing how the thermal signatures changed the appearance of the surrounding terrain. What had been invisible grass patterns during daylight now showed subtle temperature variations that might reveal enemy positions. His training in night marksmanship had prepared him for exactly this type of scenario. The Grass Phantom's concealment techniques would be less effective in complete darkness, but the enemy had already proven their adaptability and professional training. Thompson assumed their opponents possessed night vision equipment comparable to American military technology, which meant the advantage of darkness might be minimal. Martinez adjusted his night vision goggles and immediately spotted heat signatures that hadn't been visible during daylight observation. 3 distinct thermal images showed human forms positioned in grass that had appeared completely empty just hours earlier. The enemy's daytime camouflage had been so effective that they had been literally invisible to conventional observation methods. Santos prepared his explosives for nighttime detonation, understanding that the psychological impact of coordinated blasts would be enhanced by darkness. The plan involved creating multiple diversions that would force the enemy to reveal their positions while providing cover for the SEAL team's movement. Chen studied the thermal patterns visible through his night vision equipment, noting that the enemy positions showed the heat discipline characteristic of professional military training. Their opponents understood how to minimize thermal signatures while maintaining tactical effectiveness, indicating advanced training in night operations. Kim's communication equipment functioned more effectively in the cooler nighttime temperatures, allowing him to establish intermittent contact with their forward operating base. The messages he received indicated that close air support was still several hours away due to weather conditions and political restrictions on air operations in the region. Williams maintained his forward observation position, using his night vision equipment to monitor the compound they had been sent to reconnoiter. The facility showed increased activity, with personnel moving between buildings using covered walkways that suggested they were prepared for potential airstrikes. Thompson realized that their opponents had been planning this engagement for hours, possibly days before the SEAL team arrived in the area. The professional preparation and tactical sophistication suggested advanced intelligence about American reconnaissance missions in the region. Johnson identified what appeared to be an enemy sniper position through thermal imaging, but the heat signature was so faint that it could have been a decoy or natural thermal variation. The Grass Phantom's concealment skills extended to thermal discipline, making target identification extremely challenging even with advanced optical equipment. The psychological warfare continued as the enemy maintained their tactical patience, refusing to be drawn into premature engagement despite the tempting targets presented by the American positions. This professional approach to combat operations indicated training and experience that exceeded typical insurgent capabilities. Martinez detected movement patterns that suggested the enemy force was larger than initially estimated, with at least 10 individuals positioned around their perimeter. The thermal signatures showed coordinated movement that indicated centralized command and control, rather than independent operative actions. Santos began implementing the diversionary plan, placing explosive charges at predetermined locations that would create confusion and force enemy movement. His demolitions training included psychological warfare techniques designed to manipulate enemy behavior through carefully timed detonations. Chen calculated ballistic solutions for multiple potential targets, accounting for nighttime temperature variations and wind patterns that differed significantly from daytime conditions. His sniper training emphasized adaptability to changing environmental factors that could affect bullet trajectory. Kim managed to transmit a detailed situation report that included enemy positions and capabilities observed during their extended surveillance period. The intelligence would be valuable for future operations, assuming the team survived to provide additional details. Williams observed that the compound's defensive preparations included anti-aircraft weapons that hadn't been visible during their initial reconnaissance. This explained the delays in close air support and indicated their opponents possessed sophisticated military equipment. Thompson made the tactical decision to initiate their breakout attempt using unconventional methods that would exploit the enemy's professional expectations. Standard military doctrine would be anticipated by opponents with advanced training, requiring creative solutions to achieve tactical surprise. Johnson prepared for night shooting conditions that would test the limits of his marksmanship abilities. The combination of thermal imaging, conventional night vision, and ambient light conditions created a complex targeting environment that required constant adaptation. The Grass Phantom's position remained undetectable even with night vision equipment, suggesting camouflage techniques that exceeded standard military training. The enemy sniper had become a psychological factor that affected every tactical decision made by the SEAL team. Martinez identified potential escape routes that might be less heavily defended during nighttime hours, when visual observation would be more difficult for enemy forces. However, thermal imaging capabilities could negate the advantages of darkness if their opponents possessed comparable equipment. Santos completed placement of his diversionary explosives, creating a sequence of detonations that would simulate an artillery barrage or airstrike. The psychological impact would hopefully cause enemy forces to seek cover or reposition in ways that created tactical opportunities. Chen studied wind patterns that had changed significantly since sunset, requiring new ballistic calculations for long-range shooting. The atmospheric conditions created thermal currents that could deflect bullets unpredictably, making precision shooting extremely challenging. Kim's communication attempts revealed that other American units in the region were experiencing similar electronic warfare interference, suggesting a coordinated enemy operation that extended beyond their immediate tactical situation. This indicated planning and resources that exceeded typical insurgent capabilities. Williams documented the professional military equipment being employed by enemy forces, including night vision devices and thermal imaging systems that matched American technological capabilities. The financial investment required for such equipment suggested significant backing from organized military or intelligence organizations. Thompson understood that conventional escape and evasion tactics would be anticipated by opponents who had demonstrated thorough knowledge of American special operations procedures. Success would require innovations that exploited enemy expectations while maximizing their own tactical advantages. Johnson made final adjustments to his night vision scope, preparing for shots that would need to be executed under extremely challenging conditions. The target acquisition process was complicated by thermal interference and the enemy's superior concealment techniques. The psychological pressure intensified as the SEAL team prepared for what they knew would be a desperate attempt to break out of their encirclement. Every decision carried life-or-death consequences, and their opponents had proven themselves to be formidable adversaries, worthy of respect and caution. Martinez observed that enemy movement patterns showed the coordination characteristic of military units with extensive training in small unit tactics. The opponents weren't simply insurgents with military equipment. They were professional soldiers with advanced capabilities. Santos activated the first sequence of diversionary explosions, creating a rolling barrage that simulated incoming artillery fire. The psychological impact was immediate, with thermal signatures showing enemy personnel seeking cover and adjusting positions in response to the perceived threat. Chen identified muzzle flashes from enemy positions that had been forced to reveal themselves during the diversionary bombardment. The thermal blooms created by weapons fire provided target opportunities that hadn't existed during the day-long standoff. Kim attempted to coordinate their breakout with available friendly forces, but the communication difficulties continued to hamper effective coordination. The electronic warfare capabilities being employed against them indicated sophisticated technical resources. Williams provided target designation for enemy positions that had been revealed by the diversionary explosions, using laser designators that could guide precision fires if close air support became available. His role was crucial in maximizing the effectiveness of any external fire support. Thompson issued orders that committed his team to decisive action, understanding that their window of opportunity would be brief before enemy forces adapted to their new tactics. The success of their mission now depended on speed, accuracy, and tactical coordination under extreme pressure. Johnson acquired what he believed to be a legitimate target, but the shot would expose his position and invite immediate retaliation. The mathematics of sniper engagement favored whoever achieved the first successful hit, making target identification critical. The enemy response to their diversionary tactics demonstrated the professional training and equipment that made these opponents so dangerous. Instead of panicking or responding predictably, the hostile forces adapted their positions while maintaining tactical cohesion. Martinez provided covering fire as the team began their movement, engaging targets of opportunity while maintaining awareness of the overall tactical situation. His role required balancing aggressive fire support with ammunition conservation and position security. Santos detonated additional explosive charges in sequence, creating multiple diversions that forced enemy personnel to make tactical decisions under pressure. The psychological warfare component of his demolitions training proved crucial in manipulating opponent behavior. Chen engaged an enemy sniper position that had been revealed by thermal imaging, but the target disappeared before he could confirm a successful hit. The enemy's ability to rapidly reposition while maintaining concealment continued to complicate the tactical situation. Kim managed to establish communication with a drone aircraft that was conducting surveillance in their area, providing target coordinates for enemy positions that might be engaged if circumstances permitted. The electronic warfare environment continued to degrade communication effectiveness. Williams observed that their diversionary tactics had achieved partial success, with several enemy positions being forced to reposition or seek better cover. However, the brass phantom remained undetected and continued to pose the primary threat to their escape attempt. Thompson led his team through the initial phase of their breakout, using cover and concealment techniques while maintaining tactical formation under enemy fire. The success of their escape would depend on reaching more defensible terrain before their opponents could coordinate an effective response. Johnson provided overwatch fire as his teammates moved, engaging targets that threatened the team's movement while searching for the elusive Grass Phantom, who continued to dominate the tactical situation through superior concealment and marksmanship skills. The night had become a deadly game of tactical chess, with both sides demonstrating professional military capabilities in an engagement that would test the limits of training, equipment, and combat experience. The outcome remained uncertain as the SEAL team fought for their survival against opponents who had proven themselves worthy of respect and extreme caution. The explosion echoed across the mountainous terrain as Santos detonated his final diversionary charge, creating a massive fireball that temporarily illuminated the entire battlefield. In that brief moment of artificial daylight, Johnson saw him, the Grass Phantom, rising from a position that had been completely invisible just meters from their location. The enemy sniper had been so close that Johnson could see the intricate grass camouflage woven into his clothing and equipment. Thompson felt his blood run cold as he realized how completely they had been outmaneuvered. The Grass Phantom hadn't been hunting them from a distance. He had been lying within 50 meters of their position for hours, listening to their conversations and observing their every movement. The level of fieldcraft required for such concealment was beyond anything they had encountered in their military careers. Martinez swung his rifle toward the revealed position, but the Grass Phantom had already melted back into the landscape, disappearing as completely as if he had never existed. The brief glimpse had revealed a figure draped in grass and vegetation so thoroughly that distinguishing between man and terrain was nearly impossible, even when looking directly at him. Johnson immediately adjusted his scope toward the area where the enemy sniper had been revealed, but thermal imaging showed no heat signature that could be distinguished from the surrounding environment. The Grass Phantom's concealment techniques extended beyond visual camouflage to include thermal discipline that defied conventional detection methods. The enemy sniper's proximity explained how their communications had been monitored and their tactical plans anticipated. He had been close enough to hear their whispered conversations and observe their hand signals, providing real-time intelligence to other enemy forces positioned around their perimeter. Santos felt a chill of professional respect mixed with genuine fear as he comprehended the implications of the Grass Phantom's concealment abilities. To remain undetected at such close range while maintaining tactical effectiveness required skills that went beyond military training into the realm of natural hunting instincts honed over years of combat experience. Chen understood that conventional counter-sniper tactics were useless against an opponent who could literally disappear while being directly observed. The enemy's movement and concealment techniques suggested extensive training in environments where detection meant death, creating survival skills that exceeded standard military capabilities. Kim's communication equipment had been functioning poorly because the Grass Phantom had been using a portable jamming device from close range, explaining the intermittent failures and signal degradation they had experienced throughout the day. The enemy's technical capabilities matched their fieldcraft skills. Williams realized that many of the grass disturbances they had attributed to wind or small animals had actually been caused by the enemy snipers' movements. The Grass Phantom had been repositioning around their perimeter for hours, gathering intelligence and coordinating with other hostile forces. Thompson made the tactical decision to implement immediate dispersal procedures, understanding that their current defensive position had been completely compromised. The enemy sniper's close proximity meant that concentrated defensive positions would invite coordinated fire from multiple directions. Johnson prepared for the most challenging shot of his career, knowing that engaging the Grass Phantom would require anticipating his movement patterns and shooting at areas where thermal disturbance might indicate human presence. Conventional target acquisition methods were useless against this opponent. The psychological impact of discovering how completely they had been outmaneuvered was significant, but SEAL training emphasized adaptation and aggressive response to changing tactical situations. The team's survival depended on their ability to think creatively while maintaining combat effectiveness under extreme pressure. Martinez began using suppressive fire techniques designed to force enemy movement, understanding that the Grass Phantom's concealment abilities would be less effective if he was forced to move rapidly across varied terrain. The key was creating conditions that favored American technological advantages. Santos prepared smoke grenades that would obscure thermal imaging and complicate the enemy's observation capabilities, while also providing concealment for the SEAL team's movement. Chemical concealment might level the playing field against opponents with superior camouflage skills. Chen identified wind patterns that could be used to mask the sound of their movement while simultaneously affecting the accuracy of enemy fire. Environmental factors that had been working against them could be exploited if properly understood and utilized. Kim managed to establish brief communication with drone aircraft operating in the region, providing coordinates for suspected enemy positions, and requesting immediate close air support. The electronic warfare environment continued to degrade communication effectiveness, but critical information was being transmitted. Williams observed that the compound they had been sent to reconnoiter was now showing defensive preparations that suggested anticipation of American airstrikes. The enemy's coordination and tactical preparation indicated advance warning of their reconnaissance mission. Thompson realized that their mission parameters had changed fundamentally once the Grass Phantom was revealed to be operating at close range. Intelligence gathering was no longer the primary objective. Survival and tactical adaptation had become the immediate priorities. Johnson detected thermal anomalies that might indicate enemy positions, but the signatures were so faint that target discrimination was nearly impossible. The enemy's thermal discipline exceeded anything described in American military intelligence reports about insurgent capabilities. The Grass Phantom's reveal had demonstrated that American technological advantages could be negated by superior fieldcraft and tactical patience. The enemy had turned the SEAL team's own professional capabilities against them by exploiting their expectations and training procedures. Martinez coordinated his fire with Santos's smoke deployment, creating overlapping fields of suppression that would complicate enemy observation and movement. Their tactics focused on area denial rather than precision targeting, acknowledging the impossibility of conventional engagement with invisible opponents. Santos activated thermal smoke grenades that would create temperature variations designed to confuse infrared imaging systems while simultaneously obscuring visual observation. The chemical concealment provided temporary tactical advantages that could be exploited for movement and repositioning. Chen calculated firing solutions for areas where enemy presence was suspected rather than confirmed, using environmental disturbance patterns and tactical probability to guide his target selection. Engaging invisible opponents required predictive shooting based on behavioral analysis rather than direct observation. Kim coordinated with available friendly forces in the region, providing intelligence about enemy capabilities and tactical innovations that exceeded previous estimates. The information would be crucial for other American units operating in areas where similar opponents might be encountered. Williams maintained overwatch responsibilities, while adapting his observation techniques to account for enemies who could remain undetected even under direct observation. His role required constant vigilance and assumption that hostile forces were present in areas that appeared completely clear. Thompson led his team through tactical movement procedures modified to account for close-range enemy observation and the possibility of contact at any moment. Standard movement techniques were adapted to provide mutual support while minimizing exposure to known enemy capabilities. Johnson engaged suspected enemy positions using suppressive fire designed to force movement or response that might reveal actual target locations. His ammunition was limited, making every shot a calculated investment in gaining tactical information about opponent positions. The enemy response to their adapted tactics demonstrated continued professional coordination and tactical sophistication. Instead of responding predictably to suppressive fire and chemical concealment, the hostile forces maintained discipline while adapting their own procedures. Martinez observed that enemy fire discipline remained excellent despite the pressure being applied through suppressive fire and area denial techniques. Their opponents continued to demonstrate training and experience that matched American Special Operations capabilities. Santos detonated additional explosive charges positioned to create choke points and channel enemy movement into areas where they could be more effectively engaged. His demolitions training included tactical engineering that could be used to manipulate terrain and opponent behavior patterns. Chen identified muzzle flashes from enemy positions that had been forced to engage, but the signatures disappeared so quickly that follow-up shots were extremely difficult. The enemy's ability to rapidly engage and then disappear continued to complicate the tactical situation. Kim's communication with drone aircraft provided real-time intelligence about enemy movement patterns that weren't visible from ground level, allowing the team to anticipate threats and coordinate their tactical response more effectively. Williams documented the professional military equipment and tactics being employed by enemy forces, providing intelligence that would be valuable for future operations against similar opponents. The technical capabilities being demonstrated exceeded typical insurgent resources. Thompson understood that their escape would require continued tactical innovation and adaptation to enemy capabilities that exceeded intelligence estimates. Conventional procedures were insufficient against opponents who had demonstrated superior knowledge of American tactical doctrine. Johnson prepared for continued engagement with an enemy who remained largely invisible despite their best efforts to force detection. The Grass Phantom continued to dominate the tactical situation through skills that challenged everything the SEALs thought they understood about camouflage and concealment. The revelation of how completely they had been outmaneuvered provided crucial tactical intelligence, but also demonstrated that their opponents possessed capabilities that would require fundamental changes in American Special Operations procedures for future missions in similar environments. Martinez maintained suppressive fire while his teammates moved to more defensible positions, understanding that their survival depended on continued adaptation and tactical flexibility against opponents who had proven themselves to be formidable adversaries worthy of extreme caution and professional respect. The dawn sky was beginning to show the first hints of gray when Johnson made the shot that changed everything. He hadn't been aiming at the Grass Phantom directly, because the enemy sniper remained invisible even with thermal imaging and night vision equipment. Instead, Johnson had been studying the environmental patterns around suspected enemy positions, looking for the subtle disturbances that might reveal human presence. The key insight came when Chen observed that certain grass stalks were moving in patterns inconsistent with the wind direction. The movement was so subtle that it could easily be attributed to small animals or natural settling, but Chen's sniper training had taught him to notice anomalies that others would dismiss as irrelevant environmental factors. Johnson calculated his shot based on the assumption that the grass movement indicated human breathing patterns. The mathematics were complex, requiring him to estimate the grass phantom's position based on vegetation disturbance rather than direct target acquisition. The shot would be more art than science, relying on intuition developed through years of combat experience. When Johnson's bullet found its mark, the reaction was immediate and dramatic. The grass phantom rose from his concealment, clutching his shoulder while attempting to maintain his camouflage discipline. For the first time since the engagement began, the enemy sniper was fully visible to the SEAL team, and they could see the incredible sophistication of his concealment system. Thompson immediately coordinated the team's response to capitalize on this tactical opportunity. The grass phantom's wound would degrade his effectiveness, but he remained dangerous and needed to be neutralized completely before he could re-establish his concealment or coordinate with other enemy forces. Martinez engaged the wounded sniper with precision fire, but the grass phantom managed to reach cover behind a rock formation that provided protection from direct fire. Even wounded, the enemy demonstrated tactical skills and survival instincts that commanded professional respect from the American operators. Santos prepared to maneuver toward the enemy position using cover provided by his remaining explosive charges, understanding that close-quarters engagement might be necessary to eliminate a threat who had proven resistant to conventional long-range solutions. The wounding of the grass phantom had an immediate psychological impact on other enemy forces positioned around the SEAL team's perimeter. For the first time since the engagement began, the enemy's coordination showed signs of degradation as they responded to the unexpected development. Chen provided overwatch fire while maintaining surveillance of other suspected enemy positions, understanding that the grass phantom's neutralization was only one element of their overall tactical situation. Other hostile forces remained active and dangerous despite their leader's injury. Kim managed to establish reliable communication with close air support aircraft that were finally approaching their position, providing target coordinates for enemy positions that had been identified during the extended engagement. The arrival of air support would fundamentally alter the tactical balance. Williams coordinated the team's movement toward more defensible positions that would allow them to exploit their technological advantages while minimizing exposure to remaining enemy capabilities. Johnson maintained his sniper position, providing precision fire support while searching for additional enemy personnel who might attempt to assist their wounded leader. His successful engagement of the grass phantom had proven that invisible opponents could be defeated through innovative tactical thinking. The enemy's response to their leader's wounding demonstrated the professional training and loyalty that characterized this particular hostile force. Instead of withdrawing or surrendering, the remaining personnel attempted to provide covering fire while maneuvering to assist their wounded comrade. Thompson realized that the enemy force represented a significant intelligence opportunity if they could be captured rather than eliminated. The tactical skills and equipment they had demonstrated suggested connections to organized military or intelligence organizations that could provide valuable information about broader threats. Martinez coordinated with Santos to execute a flanking maneuver that would allow them to approach enemy positions from an unexpected direction, using terrain features and explosive diversions to mask their movement while maintaining tactical surprise. The grass phantom's concealment system, now partially visible, showed a level of sophistication that exceeded anything in American military doctrine. The integration of natural and artificial camouflage materials had created a disguise that was effective against multiple detection methods. Simultaneously, Santos employed non-lethal explosive charges designed to create confusion and disorientation rather than casualties, understanding that prisoner capture would provide more valuable intelligence than elimination of enemy personnel. Chen's sniper training allowed him to predict likely enemy movement patterns and position himself to interdict escape routes while providing cover for his teammates' maneuver. His role was crucial in preventing enemy withdrawal while minimizing friendly casualties. Kim's communication with air support revealed that drone aircraft had been monitoring the engagement and had documented the enemy's tactics and equipment for intelligence analysis. The tactical innovations demonstrated by both sides would influence future military operations. Williams observed that the compound they had originally been sent to reconnoiter was now showing signs of evacuation, with personnel destroying equipment and preparing to abandon the facility. The extended engagement had compromised whatever operation had been conducted there. Thompson coordinated the final phase of their tactical operation, balancing the need to neutralize remaining threats with the opportunity to gather intelligence through prisoner capture. The tactical success had created options that hadn't existed during their defensive phase. Johnson provided precision fire support for his teammates' maneuver, engaging specific targets that threatened their advance while avoiding collateral damage that could harm potential intelligence sources. His marksmanship skills were crucial in enabling discriminate engagement. The enemy's final defensive efforts demonstrated the loyalty and professional training that had made them such formidable opponents throughout the extended engagement. Even facing certain defeat, they continued to employ sound tactical principles and mutual support. Martinez successfully flanked the enemy position, discovering that the hostile force included foreign advisors whose equipment and tactics explained the sophisticated opposition the SEAL team had encountered. The intelligence implications were significant for understanding broader regional threats. Santos employed specialized explosive charges that created psychological pressure without causing fatal injuries, forcing enemy personnel to surrender rather than continuing resistance that had become tactically hopeless. The Grass Phantom, now identified as a former Soviet Special Forces operator with extensive experience in Afghanistan, provided crucial intelligence about training camps and organizational structures that had been unknown to American intelligence agencies. Chen's tactical analysis of the enemy's concealment techniques provided insights that would be incorporated into American special operations training, improving future capabilities against opponents who employed similar camouflage and concealment methods. Kim's communication with intelligence personnel at their forward operating base initiated a comprehensive debrief process that would extract maximum value from the tactical intelligence gathered during the extended engagement. Williams documented the professional military equipment captured during the operation, including advanced camouflage materials, communication devices, and optical equipment that exceeded previous intelligence estimates about enemy capabilities. Thompson's tactical leadership throughout the engagement had demonstrated the importance of adaptability and innovation when facing opponents who possessed unexpected capabilities and tactical sophistication. Johnson's successful engagement of an invisible opponent through environmental analysis and predictive shooting would be studied and incorporated into advanced sniper training programs for future special operations personnel. The mission that had begun as routine reconnaissance had evolved into a significant intelligence operation that provided crucial insights into enemy capabilities and organizational structures operating in the region. The SEAL team's survival and ultimate success against a formidable opponent demonstrated that American special operations training and equipment remained superior when properly applied through tactical innovation and professional leadership. The intelligence gathered from captured personnel and equipment would influence American military operations throughout the region, providing advance warning about capabilities and tactics that could be employed against future missions. Martinez's tactical performance under extreme pressure had proven his readiness for additional responsibilities and demonstrated the effectiveness of SEAL training in preparing personnel for unexpected combat situations. Santos's innovative use of explosive charges for both offensive and non-lethal applications had shown the importance of technical expertise combined with tactical creativity in special operations environments. The successful conclusion of their mission provided validation of American special operations doctrine, while identifying areas where training and equipment could be improved to address evolving enemy capabilities. The Grass Phantom's capture represented a significant intelligence victory that would provide insights into enemy training methods, organizational structures, and tactical innovations that had not been previously understood by American military intelligence. The SEAL team's experience would be analyzed and incorporated into training programs designed to prepare future special operations personnel for opponents who possessed sophisticated camouflage, concealment, and tactical capabilities.